Now let's move right along to our second presentation from Vax.Codes from Daniel. Daniel is a project lead at OpenAustin, the Civic Tech Meetup and Brigade of Code for America. As I mentioned, that's the volunteer group that built and launched Vax.Codes. He does a bunch of other stuff too, mostly focusing on privacy, voting, and climate change, including being the founder and CTO of Utility API. His personal website, go ahead and check this out, it's daylightpirates.org. That's a brief introduction. I'll pass it over to you, Daniel.
Awesome. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, I can see your presentation perfectly.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, thanks very much for inviting me to give a talk. I'm going to give a very brief overview of a project that we've been working on with OpenAustin. And I just wanted to start off with just a straight demo. All of the QR codes in this presentation are scannable. You can try them out. So this is just really quick. If you have your phone handy, you can just scan this QR code and see a demo of how easy it is to scan the QR codes from this project. And so as background for this project, and I'll come back to the demo in just a second. As background for the project, so OpenAustin is a civic tech meetup. We specifically focus on government technology and civic participation technology. And we're part of the system of meetups across the country in the Code for America Brigade Network, which is a all nonprofit volunteer network. And so we used to, before the pandemic, had monthly in-person meetups where we would work on projects. They were called hack nights or community action nights. And so that was great. And then unfortunately, we had to suspend the meetups in March 2020. And we've been having virtual meetups since then. But the real question is, like, when can we actually have in-person meetups again? Because a lot of the collaboration, a lot of the brainstorming happened in that in-person environment, and it was really helpful. And so, you know, what sort of requirements do we want to have if we resume meetups? So now that the vaccine, this project kind of started whenever the vaccine was announced, and we were like, oh, well, like maybe we can resume when everyone's vaccinated. But then the question becomes, how do you actually know that? Like, how can you verify that? How can you, as a meetup organizer or event organizer, ensure that everybody attending is vaccinated? And so this has been a topic that has been talked about, I think, fairly extensively in the most news sources. I'm like one of the links I have on one of my presentations that I've given before actually links to the New York Times talking about like what are vaccine passports, what you need to know, that sort of thing. And so we kind of started looking at that problem as well and came up with Vax.Codes to help out our meetup specifically. So Vax.Codes is a project that helps local communities easily and quickly create vaccine verification systems for local in-person gatherings. And so this is not a fully like fledged international vaccine passport infrastructure. This is very, very focused. This project is very focused on local small groups that have an existing trust network. So they already have a trust network. So like a local community center and the citizenry or the citizens who trust that local community center to issue QR codes, or in a closed system. So like a movie theater issuing QR codes for their patrons to be able to scan at any of the various theaters across the city or country. That's what this project is focused on. It's focused on ad hoc creation of vaccine verification infrastructure in local trusted systems. So the way it works is an issuer generates a key file, which is a public-private key pair. It's just an open PGP key pair, and registers with the system as an issuer. And then a person shows the issuer their vaccine record card, or the issuer somehow verifies that somebody's been vaccinated. And then that issuer issues or generates a QR code that has enough information to identify the person, or enough information to identify the person in that closed system. So maybe an ID number, or just their name, or their name and date of birth, or something. And then cryptographically sign that QR code. And then local organizers or businesses who trust that issuer. So local businesses who trust the community center to issue QR codes can scan the QR code, and all the tooling is built in to the website for them to be able to scan and use codes. And so the goals of this project, because this is like a small time project, this is just run by volunteers. It's just me and a couple of other folks coding it and everything like that. Number one is we don't want to touch PII. Like, we don't want to ever have any sort of knowledge of who's been vaccinated or who hasn't or anything like that. And so we don't want to have to worry about HIPAA. And then we also don't want to have to do any maintenance on the project. One of the things you learn at these civic tech projects is that if you're running a dynamic server, it will get out of date really fast after you're done with the project, because you've moved on to other things. The maintainers, the volunteers have moved on to other things. So no maintenance is one of the critical things. And then also, like, when this project was started, this was before the inauguration, and we of course have had the last 4 years as precedent. So we are assuming government dysfunction with the vaccine rollout and with vaccine passports. And so we're assuming that it's going to be, you know, local ecosystems on their own for that sort of thing. So nobody's going to come to rescue us. So we're going to have to figure out how to do this ourselves. We want to make free everything. To make it as equitable as possible. We don't want to, and that includes technical expertise. So we want to make this accessible to like local communities who don't have an IT person on staff, who can just start using it right away. And it's just kind of point and click. So free everything, open source, technical support, everything like that, and unlimited use. We also want to have minimal tech requirements. So for example, we can't assume that a local community member is going to have a cell phone. And so we want our QR codes to be, you know, able to be printed out on paper. We also don't want to assume that issuers have a server running somewhere or can install software. We want issuers to be able to just have a web browser, and that's the minimum requirements. And then also for scanners, like, they shouldn't have to install an app. They should just be able to scan with any QR code scanner, or even just use the website and the webcam they have on their computer, or the camera they have on their mobile browser. And as I said before, this is entirely built around assuming that an existing trust network already exists for that issuer network using this infrastructure. So really, this project is around providing tooling for existing trust networks to spin up a very, very quickly ad hoc vaccine verification system. So that's the focus of this project. And so how this project works, it's just a static website. It's a GitHub repo that automatically builds a Jekyll framework into GitHub pages. So if you go to Vax.Codes, it's just a Jekyll static website from GitHub. So obviously all the code is open source on the project repo. For issuers who are registering, we use Jekyll collections. So one of the cool things about that is you can actually just add YAML issuer things, which I'll show a little bit later, into the issuers folder or collections on the Jekyll repo, and it will automatically build into a static JSON API. So you can basically just spin up a static JSON API that you can use as part of your project. Everything is client side. There's no servers being run anywhere except for hosting the static files. So all of the scanning, issuing, key generation, everything like that happens in the browser on the client side. Registering happens over email. So when I show you how issuers can register with the repo, that's just a mail to. So it just emails. So we don't actually have to run a database anywhere of issuers or have support tickets or anything like that. It just can happen over email. It's totally fine because it's public key infrastructure. And the last one is that all of the scanned codes, all of the QR code contents is actually contained within a URL fragment, which is the hashtag stuff. And so that actually never sends that information to the server. It just gets read locally by the JavaScript itself. So our servers never actually even see any QR code contents. We have no idea how many QR codes have even been generated by an issuer. That's completely up to that. The dependencies are pretty standard for these sort of things for QR codes and crypto related. So OpenPGP.js is what we use for the crypto on the client side, and then a few QR scanner libraries and generation libraries for the QR code functionality. So it's a very, very simple project. Okay, so back to the demo. If you want to, you can pull out your phone and go to the URL or open any QR code scanner and scan this image. And it should have a link once you scan it that looks like this. So this is what the QR code contents is. It's purely just a link to the scan page with a URL fragment that contains the ID of the issuer, the signature, and any and the contents itself. So basically what it looks like is you have the URL fragment. So everything after that is not sent to the server. It's just read locally by JavaScript. The version, the ID of the issuer, in this case, it was test movies. Yep. And then the signature itself using, so elliptic curves are, have pretty short signatures. So it's not a very long signature. It's only like you're able to get a pretty small QR code. You don't have to have a very extensive QR code for this. And then the content, and the content is arbitrary. So it's really made for local customization for local communities. So you can put nicknames in there. You can, if you're like running a local Dungeons and Dragons like group, you can spin up a vaccine verification system for your, tournament or something like that, and issue the handles for all of the registrants, right? You could use this at conferences where you have anonymous attendees. There's no restrictions as far as content that I've seen. I've seen in other kind of vaccine passport, broader infrastructure stuff. So this is really for ad hoc local trust networks. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and spin up the page. So this is the website. And it's very, very simple. You can choose to scan a QR code. And so that's where you go if you just want to scan codes and you hadn't previously scanned them. And then also the issuers. So there's a link down at the bottom to an admin portal, but it's just kind of a static page. It's kind of funny. So the issuer's admin lets you generate a issuer key file. And so I can go ahead and generate that. And all that does is create a public-private key pair. And so I'm going to go ahead and save that. And then I'll save that just to my desktop. And then I will open that right quick and show you what the contents of it is. And the contents is purely just a public key and a private key. And so luckily, and so now that I have that key code, I can go back to the issuer admin. And so I've generated a new key file. Next step is to request to register as an issuer. This is optional. You can actually issue QR codes for internal use only. You don't have to register as an issuer to start using it. So you can use it entirely anonymously, and we have no idea that you're using it. But I'm just going to go ahead and show you what registration looks like. Basically, what you do is you provide the key file, and then it generates a contents of an email. And this is just a normal HTML form that has the action of a mail to. And when you mail to, let's just do a. And then when I send the email, it just pops open a window, and it has you to open in the Gmail, and then it automatically tries to send an email or populates an email ready to send to register at Vax.Codes. And so like that, I get that email, and when I get that email, I can go to the GitHub repo and create a commit in the issuer's collection, which is just a list of JSON files that are YAML, and create a new entry that looks like this. And so this is basically the front matter for Jekyll. And then when GitHub Pages goes to render, all it does is in this collection just creates a list of issuers under the URL API v1. Let me just zoom in. API v1 issuers title.json. And so that's how you can create a really, really simple static JSON API in Jekyll, which is one of the things that I really find pretty cool about this project. So let's assume I did that. Let's assume that I did that. Next up, let's, you can actually, there's a built-in grouping mechanism. So you can have a group that trusts multiple issuers. If you have several friends who you, as part of your issuer network, you can totally do that. And then the last step is to actually start issuing QR codes. And so we built that tooling in the browser itself. You don't need to install any special software or anything. All you need to do is provide your key file. And so I'm going to do the test movies. And then if you had registered, you can put in your issuer ID that you got assigned when you registered. And then I can do, say, privacy infra test and generate the QR code. And it goes ahead and generates the QR code, and then you can download it, or you can copy this URL. This URL is just what's in the QR code. So I'm going to go ahead and save that QR code, and then I'm going to try to see if this works. I'm going to disable my video. If I can do that, stop video. And then I'm going to try to go, I'm going to copy the file to my phone. If I can do that right quick. File transfer. Pixel 4a. Okay, desktop here, copy here, download, paste, unmount. Okay, so I have copied the thing to my phone, and then I'm going to go to scan QR code. I'm going to allow it to see my screen. So you should see my nice face right now. And then I'm going to open up that file that I transferred to my phone, and I'm going to hold it up, and it should scan, maybe. Come on, you can do it. There we go. And so when it scans, I can see that please make sure you personally know and trust Test Movie Theater. And then it gives the contents, and then it's issued by, and that group is not any. And then it has a warning that, you know, always, like, QR codes are just pieces of paper. So be sure to check the contents against whoever it is that you're issuing. So if it's a name or something like that, maybe you could test it against the ID, that sort of thing. So let me turn my video back on now. So that's a full-on demo of how this works. The API is, we also have a section on the website where you can browse issuers who are part of the network. So you can kind of try to find your issuer if you want. We also have groups that you can browse, and these are nothing but just JSON loading of the API, AJAX loading of the API. So it's all there. We also have a security breakdown of how the system works, including a specification of how the QR code format works and explaining the security outlook of it. So that is the demo. So one of the areas where we tried to focus, obviously, I'm a big privacy advocate, and I consider this project, you know, pretty privacy forward as far as vaccine passports go, especially. So the ACLU published a article that I have here, if you want to copy the URL from the recorded video. And it's they outline 3 things that they look for in vaccine passports to ensure that they are equitable and accessible and privacy aware, and don't have like a slippery slope of, you know, turning into a full-fledged discrimination system or tracking system. So the first is it's not exclusively digital. So we tried very, very hard to make the barriers to entry for using this very, very easy. You don't need an app. If you receive a QR code, you don't even need a phone. It can be on a piece of paper or a receipt, or it could be emailed to you or texted to you. So it's not exclusively digital as far as the issuers. And then the scanners, you also don't need an app if you're a scanner as well. You also don't need an app if you are an issuer as well. So everything can be done without any sort of app or app store or anything like that. It's decentralized and open source. As I said at the beginning, this relies entirely on existing trust networks in local communities. And so it's decentralized kind of by default. And of course, the entire project is open source and it's just a static website, so it has unlimited use. And it doesn't allow for tracking or creation of new databases. There is no database for this project. It's pure, all of the contents are stored in the QR codes, and the website itself, since it's open source, is just a really simple website. It doesn't involve any trackers. It doesn't have Google Analytics. It doesn't, like, we have no idea who's using it because GitHub Pages, to my knowledge, doesn't let you see the request log. And since we're using the URL fragment in order to put the QR code contents after that fragment, the server never sees the QR code contents at all anyway. So GitHub doesn't even know what QR codes are being scanned. So there's no logs anywhere that show what QR codes are scanned. So we need help. This is just a volunteer project. It would be like, a lot of people don't know about this. Spreading the word is definitely the first need. All the tooling is built, but we definitely need a lot of help with outreach. So we would love if you have some volunteer time or something like that. We have some GitHub issues around contacting organizations. If you're not technical or anything like that, we can still use your help in outreach to organizations that could find this thing useful, and also for contacting press organizations to talk about it. The second need is we have a lot of open GitHub issues with help wanted. I encourage you to take a look at our repo, our GitHub repo, and take a look at some of the help wanted stuff, things like, internationalization, or creating a whitelist blacklist API for being able to, blacklist misallocated QR codes, that sort of thing. And then also additional project leadership. Like, I'm a volunteer on this. I have a full-time job. I'm the founder of a climate tech startup. And so I can't spend a huge amount of time on this. I did the initial work to get all the tooling in place and get a lot of the coding in place. And so, but I would love some help in helping recruit others and helping with project leadership. So, and that could either be a person or a team. If you know a team that is working on vaccine passports and is looking for a more privacy forward and distributed and ad hoc system, I would love to talk to them because I need all the help I can get. So that's the presentation. I think I went a little bit over time, so apologies for that. But this is my contact information, and we also have a Slack channel for OpenAustin, and of course all the GitHub repo and stuff like that. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Daniel. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the presentation here. I just want to spend the next few minutes from questions from the crowd. Let's see. The first question I had is, how did you end up picking OpenGPG for the key pair?
So one of the main requirements is we didn't want to require use of the website if you don't want to. Mm-hmm. So on the website itself, there are instructions. So in the issuer's admin, in order to start issuing QR codes, at the very bottom, it says want to create a QR code locally on your computer instead of on the website. We just have instructions here on how to do that. Mm-hmm. And in order to accommodate that as much as possible, like if you actually have a sysadmin who actually wants to generate QR codes, we tried to make the software required to start doing that on your own infrastructure or internally to your infrastructure as simple as possible. And we were like, what is the easiest thing that like pretty much every single server has installed on it already? Well, it's GPG. And so let's just use that. So that's why we settled on OpenPGP for the standard for the public-private key pairs.
Awesome. Another question I got was the QR code. Is it unique to the person, or are there separate QR codes?
Yeah. So each QR code, when it's generated, is unique. There is a timestamp in there. However, we do not rely. So GPG by default has a creation time in its signature. But we don't trust that at all, because you can arbitrarily choose the creation time by just rolling back your computer time. And so we don't rely on that creation time at all as a source, but what it ends up being is kind of just like a rolling ticker for your QR codes.
Got it. Next question I have is, how does one prove that they've received the shot?
So that is completely up to the issuer. So one of the key things about this is it is very friendly for local community standards. So the key thing here is, again, it relies on an existing trust network. And so, for example, if you trust that person to check and do their due diligence in verifying somebody has received the vaccine, it's up to that issuer to like do that diligence. And it's up to the business owner or event organizer to trust that that issuer has a system in place. And one of the areas where we find this particularly helpful is when you are medically prohibited from getting the vaccine. So, for example, if you have an immunocompromised system or something like that, and you're not allowed to get the vaccine because it actually, could harm you or it could be too much for you, that's where maybe you could issue a QR code that has a special note on it that says, this person is, has been confirmed to be exempt from receiving the vaccine. So, but that's not necessarily something that should prohibit them from, attending a vaccine-only event or something like that, or like a vaccine-only showing at a movie theater or a Dungeons and Dragons night or something like that.
Gotcha. Awesome. Thank you so much. I think we're just right on time. Appreciate your presentation, Daniel.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of our amazing speakers and to everyone for coming out to our Privacy Infra event today. We'll go ahead and actually send out an email early next week with a link to the recording so you can go ahead and watch back specific talks. And a reminder, if you'd like to go ahead and speak at our next event or even just make a suggestion, feel free. We'd love to hear that. You can email us at privacy_infra@transcend.io. With that, have a great rest of your day, and we'll go ahead and see you again. Thanks all.